Small company, big move, the L1 visa journey of the Halcrow family. Welcome to the podcast where we bring you real stories, real journeys, and real insight into the navigation of the US immigration system. Just a quick note before we begin, every case is different, so while we'll be sharing some experiences today, this isn't legal advice. It's just meant to educate, encourage, and give you a window into what the process can look like. Our guest today has kindly agreed to share their story with full permission, and we're grateful to have them here today walking us through their immigration journey, and maybe a journey that is similar to your path. So if you are navigating your own situation, we always recommend that you get specific advice for your specific case. So with that, let's dive in. Today's episode is about courage, it's about entrepreneurship, and it's about the leap it takes to build a life across borders. Our guest here built a successful business in South Africa, and like many entrepreneurs, they saw an opportunity beyond their home country in the United States. And what followed was a journey through the complex world of business immigration, navigating a visa process, the bureaucracy, and growing a company in the US, moving the entire family across the world, and building a new chapter in America. And today, we're going to hear the real story, the real risks, the challenges, and the opportunity that came when the chase became bigger than the vision. I'd like to welcome Sheldon Halcrow and Kirsten Halcrow, originally from South Africa, to our podcast, and we'll get right into it. Sheldon, take us back to the moment that you and Kirsten came sit around the table and started thinking about expanding the South African company into the US. What sparked the idea?
So I think for us, the idea really was the intersection, or possibly the overlap, of a lot of business necessity and a bit of family spirit of adventure. So when I say business necessity, what had happened was we were a wealth advisory asset management business rooted in South Africa that had started losing a number of clients, a number of high net worth clients into the United States. Those clients had entered the United States on a separate program known as the EB-5. And, they'd come in, and under the rules, as a wealth advisor, we were no longer able to manage the assets from South Africa. That combined with what I mentioned, the family spirit of adventure, we'd long felt this tug. When I say the tug, most families that I've met that have made the move, there's a combination of push and pull factors. For us, there was never a push. So there was always this yearning, this pull. It was a pull, and we felt that we wanted to explore. We wanted to try something new. So back to where we started, the business necessity, we had to explore. We had to open a business in the US to keep the clients that we stood to lose, and that pull to the United States, that sense of adventure, a combination of those two, that's what led us to ultimately establishing a business and making the move.
So when did this conversation then shift from maybe someday and we actually need to do this?
So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask Kirsty to tell you the short version of the story, because she recently wrote a blog, and the blog is sort of the real story of how we got to that over dinner one night. I'd been made an offer a couple of weeks prior, and the offer was to set up a business and join an entity in Switzerland, and the family didn't feel that it wasn't the right fit. Switzerland, Zurich wasn't the right fit, and the option of initiating something in the United States came about. And I'll ask Kirsty to tell you how we got to the decision in the US.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's a little unconventional, but we pretty much did a family vote. We had a minimum number that we needed to, as a family, hit in order to have the green light. The rule was each person had to vote at least 6 out of 10 for us to get the go-ahead. And as a minimum, we needed a score of I don't know, 40, 41, whatever it was. There's 5 of us, and we overshot the number, and that was it. It was decided. We made the decision, and it was pretty much all guns sort of blaring, and that was us. Decided we were moving.
So with that along, then came some hopes. There's some fears about moving the entire family over. So Kirsten, that's probably some of the stuff that you're more focused on, and then obviously Sheldon coming over here to start up the business. Share with me a little bit about the fears, the hopes, the whole moving of the family and the business.
So I'll fire off first, and then I'll let Kirsty. I think Kirsty, with as a family, Kirsty is probably the more emotional creature. But I think we all, as humans, we are emotional creatures, and that leaving all that is comfortable and you're familiar with, and this leap into the unknown, it's that the fear of failure, I suppose, is the big one. For me, desperately, I wanted the business to thrive, and more than anything, I wanted the family to be happy. Those are the things that those were my biggest hopes, my biggest fears. There was the fear of failure, and the fear that the family wouldn't be happy ultimately, that this wouldn't work for everyone. That was my perspective. Those were my worries.
Yeah, I think from my perspective, it was all very unknown. I talk about sort of unconventional, and in many ways our whole journey has been unconventional. A lot of people plan a look-see where they plan a trip, they go and see where they're going to go settle. I mean, we really went in sort of kind of blind. We had a good sort of number of friends that had settled in an area. They spoke highly of the area. I think Sheldon flew out for a day or two on his own, sort of just to come over here. But other than that, we pretty much went in kind of blind. We sold up everything. We packed bags, 2 bags each. So we came over with 10 bags, and we came sort of very sort of blind, and you don't know what to expect, and I suppose you don't know what you don't know, which means everything was sort of a learning curve for us from day one. Gotcha.
Sheldon, just take me back. You said that you are in the wealth business, the wealth management business. Where did the business in South Africa first start off with? How long were you in that business before the US even became an option?
So I've pretty much done nothing else. I've been in this business for 35 odd years. I cut my teeth on the original stock exchange floor when you used to have a floor, the Johannesburg Stock Exchange, when Stock Exchange still traded with chalkboards on Diagonal Street. It was a very long time ago. I don't think many people still remember that system. And the business, I could say, was unremarkable only because there's a lot of people that do something similar. There's South African business, managing money for a number of high net worth individuals. What was remarkable, I believe, and what is worth mention, is that the business had evolved from the business just managing money for high net worth individuals to this division which we now run, where what we were catering for was high net worth South African families that were immigrating into the United States. The business is now into its 6th year, and we still haven't found another South African financial services entity that has taken the same route that is set up in the United States. Just if you can imagine, it doesn't matter how wealthy a South African family is. When they land in the United States for the first time, it's quite daunting in that they get you, and despite some of their global assets, they have no credit score. They can't raise a loan. The complexity of the U.S. tax system is a minefield. They've got assets spread across multiple jurisdictions around the world, because generally speaking, they'd already started to externalize out of South Africa. They're now dealing with 2 different tax systems. They haven't fully exited out of South Africa, and they have a financial presence this side. They need to open up accounts. They need to get insurance. They need to set up. They need a will. They need estate planning. So the business was the first to really have licensing in both jurisdictions and effectively create what we now call a soft landing for families exiting South Africa and entering the US, where we help them sort of externalize funds out of South Africa and onshore into the United States. And what was even more remarkable, not just with Calio USA, but ultimately, I suppose, is what Kirsty developed with a related business called Emigrate USA, which took care of everything that wasn't in the wealth advisory and asset management space. You know, my skill set and my licensing was limited to the wealth advisory and asset management, but families were approaching us with questions and asking us to help solve problems for them that weren't in that sphere. And everything else was accommodated by the business that Kirsty subsequently launched, which was everything else that families required. Families coming in from South Africa.
Yeah, I mean, Kirsten, you needed to figure this all out by yourself. So, what do we do with a dog? How are we going to get the dog over here? The logistics about moving some of your furniture over here. What do you do when, what's the best grocery stores to go to? That's kind of where you kind of found a niche here that says, hey, listen, you've got the guys who do the visas and all that kinds of stuff. You're going to have businesses that's going to, do what they need to do. But there's this niche here with regards to everything else.
Yeah, I think the whole sort of passion behind it was, I mean, there are resources out there, there are Facebook groups that you kind of chat on, but I feel like you ask a question and you get 400 different answers or opinions. Cool. So I just really sort of thought, let me share the learnings, let me share, if I can make someone else's path a little easier for them, if someone had shared a little bit of information with me, it might have made certain things a little easier. So I kind of documented and wrote a few articles, and I've just put some sort of resources in place just to make it a little easier for those navigating the whole process, and credible sort of service providers that can help them, as you say, with pet relocation and forex and all that stuff, because it's a minefield. You've got so much that you've got to deal with. If you've got one place where you can sort of go and find some reputable information, that was kind of the purpose.
And Sheldon, getting over here, it's not like this company was already established. You were the pioneer sent by the South African company to come and open up the office over here, get licensed, get the office open, go rent a space, buy furniture, whatever it takes, get this office up and running in order to, expand this opportunity in the United States to continue to have, the service that you've provided us. Just walk us through a little bit about, some of those challenges. So,
I suppose ultimately, those challenges led to the selection of the L1 visa. But yes, those challenges. I'd like to say, we were an established business. In all honesty, the truth is we were a little bit naive. I think there was a lot of learning when we landed. So the expectation was we were an established business, and all we had to do was get appropriately licensed and set up an office space and just continue doing what we had to do in the United States. We quickly learned that the rules on this side are very different, and we quickly had to learn the new rules. The markets are much deeper; they're way more fluid. The compliance burden was way heavier than what we were used to. The whole process was way more transactional than what we were used to. We learned that under the L1 visa, we had to employ U.S. staff. We were unprepared for that. We didn't realize that we were, for the first reviews, we were going to have to bring on US employees. So that was a little bit of learning. We didn't realize that for the reviews, there was going to be a real inspection that this business had to be standalone, had to be profitable. That wasn't what couldn't just be a mom and pop shop. It wasn't just a window dressing exercise. It had to be a real standalone business. The financials had to be sound. So that was a real learning for us. We couldn't just rest on our laurels. Anyway, all in, the bottom line is that I think we underestimated just how seriously we had to take this. Within those first 6 months, we had to bring on staff, we had to get business premises, we had to get our licensing in order. We had to bring on a compliance officer. In fact, we brought on a US partner, and within the first 6 months, we had a sizable book. We had a US partner, and we had offices not just in Florida, but also in New Jersey.
So there is this myth that you mentioned the L visa. You guys utilize the L visa route in order to come to the US. For those who don't know, we'll get into a little bit about what the requirements. But this is the intercompany transfer, where you transfer an employee from a foreign company to the US, newly formed US company. So there is this common myth that these L visas are really just for large multinational corporations. So you've shared a little bit about your experience on a growing company. What would you say helped you navigate then the guidance on this process in order to navigate this process? Or maybe before I get there, was there any other options maybe available as short from the L visa that you discussed?
So, I mean, in honesty, Leon, given that you were our guide, the truth, we had to look at a number of different options. For us, the L1 visa was the most logical and the most appropriate route, because we weren't starting from scratch. We were expanding existing business into the United States. Calio Capital was already an established operating company, so the L1 allowed us to transfer that business footprint into the United States. What we knew was we weren't looking for a passive investment, something like the EB5, and we weren't employees being sponsored by a third party, so neither of those were options. So we weren't looking at the extremes. We didn't have family members that were sponsoring us, so the heritage option wasn't available. We certainly weren't refugees. That wasn't something we were having a look at. So this just seemed like the most natural fit. I realized in hindsight we were probably a little small for the L1. Again, a little bit of learning. I sense the L1 is probably designed for slightly bigger businesses. I think what I've realized is the burden on smaller entrepreneurial firms is probably a little bit higher than what I'd anticipated going the L1 route. We were probably a little bit small for L1.
How many people did you ultimately have on your L visa and the L visa renewal? How many employees?
So, Kurt, do you remember the numbers? What we had to get to for employees? But I think we were under pressure by the end of that by the end of the first year to get to 5 employees.
Yes, I think for our renewal we had 3 perms. But we also we were working with a sort of a network of subcontractors.
And this was really kind of just to support your business necessity, right? I mean, this was as your company was growing, these were some people that you needed to kind of employ in order to help elevate you from the guy who comes in the morning, literally opens up the shop, goes sits behind the computer. There's somebody who can obviously field some of these calls, from your high net worth investors while you're still on the call and trying to figure out where the next deal is coming from. So it naturally grown to a point where from the first time when you were the guy who did everything to ultimately growing the company in order to have some supportive role there as it relates to your business. I mean, it's different from a company like a restaurant. You come over to have a restaurant. Well, you're going to need a whole bunch of waiters, right, to run around, and a whole kitchen staff. I mean, your business that specifically just does, these asset management. I mean, how much staff do you really, practically need in order to run it? I mean, so the L visa is really kind of designed in order to make sure that it meets your need. I mean, you can't necessarily, overinflate numbers just for purposes of overinflating numbers. So it seems like there was a natural growth to it. But yes, in rapid time, because of the L visa, the initial L visa only being in 1 year. And then after that 1 year, it's like, what do you got? I mean, a lot of companies, once they get started, irrespective of immigration pressure, how do you show after 1 year that things are going good? I mean, a lot of companies after the first 3 years will probably get to a point where, like, okay, I think we've got settled in because now we've got some numbers to reflect on, what business was like last year, what can we expect this year? And even then, it's still, who knows? That's why, after 3 years, you can really kind of say, but, these visas are designed, these L visas especially, speaking of pressure, to have you come open up the doors, sit, shop up, and, oh, by the way, 6 months is gone just like that. And, how many people have you hired in order to make sure that, we can keep going?
So we had no problem hiring, but we figured we would make the hiring decision sometime much later. We had no intention of hiring within the first year, let alone the first 6 months. The second thing is, I think it's well known that staff in the United States are certainly more expensive than the same staff that you're hiring in South Africa. The nature of the industry that I'm involved in, individuals brought in need to be appropriately licensed. Bringing in an advisor, the advisor needs to have a certain number of years of experience and needs to carry certain qualifications before you bring them into certain roles, whether they are in advisory or compliance or operations or all sorts of other things. So it's not just like I say, being at a restaurant and bringing someone in part-time. So these are sort of highly qualified individuals for a lot of the roles. So they certainly you pay them a premium, and there's a huge process in terms of background checks. Again, back to the learnings. Originally the idea was this would be to some extent a window dressing operation. We'd run the operations run the offices from the United States, but we'd largely rely on the back office support from South Africa.
Sure.
It didn't turn out that way at all. We had to almost completely rebuild the operations from the United States. Our own website, our own payroll systems, our own domains, you name it, completely rebuild the offices from the US. But it certainly made us more resilient. We are now a completely independent, standalone business to the extent that if the rest of the global operations fell away, that we are not impacted at all. We're an independent, standalone business. It's been great for us.
What would you say, how did the right guidance through this process impact your confidence in continue to move forward?
So I think that's one of the best advice for anyone else considering this is early on, getting advice from the right people and bringing on the right partners, people that have been involved in this process before. So the partnerships with, so credit to yourself, Leon, the immigration attorneys that have walked this path before, bringing on a partner, a wealth advisory partner that had run a registered investment advisory practice, that he built a career in this. Those sorts of partnerships certainly set us in good stead. That's probably my best advice to anyone considering doing this, is appointing someone that has the experience.
Yeah, and just to kind of help those people that you put in as part of your team, as you got standards over here, picking the right team, from what I'm hearing you say, is crucial. I think maybe let me just quickly pause here for a moment. We've been talking about this L visa, and let me maybe just quickly go over some of the criteria. So the L visa is at kind of a high level. To qualify for an L visa, there needs to be a qualifying relationship between the foreign company, in this case Sheldon's South African company, and the newly formed US company. So this could be a parent, a branch, a subsidiary, an affiliate. That's number one. Number two, then the employee that is coming over must have worked for the foreign company for at least one continuous year within the past 3 years. So in this case, Sheldon worked for the foreign company obviously more than a year before he can come over. The role that the foreigner or the person that's coming over, that role must be an executive, a managerial capacity, or in a specialized worker. And then number three, the U.S. company must be actively doing business or have a viable plan to do so, especially in the new office. Like Sheldon, when you come over here, there was no viable actively doing business, but there was a viable plan. We went through an extensive business plan to, project over the next 5 years of how things are going to work. And then more importantly, I would say, just to your last point, you were talking about there needs to be some sufficient evidence of the operations, staffing plan, and then some financial capacity, if not from an initial investment point of view, the qualifying company, a foreign company, standing in such a way to help support the newly formed company. So, this is obviously, as we've talked about, not limited to just these Fortune 100, Fortune 500 corporations, but smaller, well-structured companies can absolutely qualify to meet these requirements. So let's talk about the challenges. What were the biggest hurdles you faced transferring to the U.S.? I don't know, maybe Kirsten, if you want to take on that question.
So just learning, learning life as you know it. Everything is kind of turned upside down, from the seasons to the school years. I could list 100 things where it feels like your life is upside down, back to front. Your kids are on summer holidays in July for 3 months. In December, it's not a holiday like it was in South Africa. It's not a summer break in December.
And it's obviously because, just for our American viewers, God love them, we live in the southern hemisphere in South Africa, and so the summer is over the Christmas time. We don't have white Christmases, and so that's what Kirsten is referring to. And obviously the school year runs January to December as opposed to year. In the middle of the year, people are like, all right, let's get this year off to a good start in August. I'm like, what?
And I mean, if that's not enough, I mean, we, the whole temperature and measurement, everything we do is in Celsius. Now suddenly you've got to learn Fahrenheit. You're going from kilometers to miles, and I guess it's just, I don't know. I mean, at our age, it's like to start relearning. We had to do our driver's licenses, our learner's licenses over again. We have to drive on the other side of the road. So I think that just is super overwhelming. And then, as Sheldon mentioned earlier, I mean, you arrive with sort of zero credit score starting over. Can't get a rental because you don't have a credit report. And in many instances, we kind of had to rely on lucky breaks sometimes. We managed to find a family that was prepared to rent or prepared, to give us a rental agreement, which is uncommon when you can't provide a credit report. So it's sort of being new, and that for me was sort of the biggest sort of hurdles. And then at the same time, I suppose you're jumping through immigration hoops as well as trying to establish a business at the same time. So it feels like probably the most overwhelming 12 months ever, just sort of trying to adapt to a new life, settle kids in who are possibly in different phases of settling at any given time. I say the younger your kids are, the better. They just settle easier. It's really tough when you have teenagers who sort of know and have grown up in another country.
How old were your kids when they came over?
They were, odd that I forget now, but 8. My youngest was 8, and the other 2 were 14 and 16.
And you say that the 14 and 16-year-old is a little bit more challenging for them too.
Yeah, I mean that was super tough to go into high school in a new country, with a strange accent. So yeah, I mean just sort of trying to navigate the emotional side, the business side, and then the unknowns of the immigration. I think just adds a little bit of sort of emotional. You don't know. Is your renewal going to come through? How soon is the next process going to take? So I think that's sort of just overwhelming to a large extent.
So I mean, I'll crystallize it in like a 1-minute story. So the first time I saw Kirsty in tears, Kirsty's checking the kids into school, and you get the question, in case of emergency, you have to list someone. Who do they phone in case of an emergency? And Kirsty was in tears, and I couldn't figure out. And she said, well, who do I put? I normally put my mom or my sister. We had no one to put. We didn't have anyone that we could write in case of emergency. Who does the school phone? It's a simple things like that. You get and as a family, we don't have anyone. Who do you put? Back in South Africa, you could list 100 names of anyone they could phone, but yeah, we had no one. Anyway, just gives you an idea of small things like that. You suddenly lost. You got no support system. But those are the sorts of emotional things that we were battling with.
And how did the children's adapt? So you said that the 8-year-old was pretty easy, but the 14 and 16-year-old, you talked about accents. I mean, we're speaking English, right? For the love of God. I mean, my first language is Afrikaans, but here we are speaking English. You guys sound like a Florida accent. But I mean, at the end of the day, the English, I keep telling people it's not the same, right? We had the King's English in South Africa that we grew up with, and we were required to have both Afrikaans and English, all the way through high school. But you come over here and you tell people, all right, listen, let's just put that bags in the boot. And they're like, look at you, what the hell is a boot? And you tell them, let's lift up the bonnet of the car and to go check the oil or whatever the case may be. Or you get to a gas station and you're waiting for someone to pump your gas and like nobody's showing up.
I say in the two countries we play a sport, and the sport to the uninformed looks the same. In South Africa we play rugby and we play football, and both of them you wear cleats and you play it with this oblong ball. For both of them you need some strength and some speed and a level of skill. It looks like the same game. They are completely different games. We speak English, but it's in some sense, that might as well be a different language. I admittedly, we weren't making a move to Switzerland where we would have had to have learned German or French or Eastern Europe. That would be completely different. This was familiar territory, but it certainly wasn't easy. But yes, I mean, back to what Kirsty's saying, the 16-year-old daughter, we literally arrived days before she turned 16, so 16th birthday. Back home, she's popular, she's in high school, she's got a boyfriend, she's looking forward to her final years of high school, and suddenly she arrives here and she knows no one. It's very difficult. The same for us. Back where we were, we were top of our careers, running well-known businesses, and we arrive and we've got to start from scratch, from ground level, just prove ourselves and start all over again. It's exciting, but it's daunting at the same time.
Yeah. Kristen, you want to add something to that?
No, I mean, we could probably joke for days about speaking a different language. I truly get that. I mean, we've been very fortunate in that the place that we live, we have a really big South African community, which makes it easy for us to speak our South African English. But yeah, I mean, we will definitely be in company of our fellow Americans and say words, and they look at us like what are you talking about? So yeah, we definitely have our own slang, which we still speak a lot of.
And would you also, maybe for those who, their only little lens or window into America is obviously what they see on TV, would you say that there's a little bit of a difference between the culture that you experience from movies and shows that you see on TV versus the reality?
So, I mean, from my perspective, I feel like the US, we still sort of learning. I feel like the US is like a whole lot of countries in one. I don't feel like the state I live in is the same as where you live. I mean, we've traveled to a few states. We've sort of just gone through an airport of another state, and I can feel the different culture vibe. So I don't think there's one USA. I wouldn't say like there's one kind of American, one kind of USA. It is like 100 worlds in one, but all good and sort of I don't know. I mean, on the positive side, our access to just amazing things has been really sort of the positive side of our experience.
What opportunities have opened up since you guys make this move? Either one.
Well, I mean, it seems odd, but I mean, just the concerts alone are. I mean, we've seen more concerts in the past 3 years than we would have ever experienced. I mean, in South Africa, and that's just for us. That's been one of the sort of really sort of amazing, enjoyable things. Shell, I don't know. You can probably think of.
I just, every aspect of what we've done. So we've been blessed with access to the holiday destinations that are within reach. We just got back from Mexico. We had a couple of days for spring break. And with 4 or 5 days at hand, we were able to go and spend some time in Cancun. Those sorts of opportunities wouldn't have been available to us from South Africa. Business opportunities. My proximity to networks and people, being based in Florida and having the connections that I've built from where I am, I've been given access to people and opportunities in business that just would have been unfathomable, 5-7 years ago from South Africa. My daughter is busy studying at university now. She sent me photographs earlier where she's a part-time teacher in a class. That's something I couldn't have dreamt of a while back. My son is preparing to move into a college dormitory at Florida State. That's something that we couldn't have dreamt of a number of years ago. So I mean, across the board, in our personal lives, in academia, in business, in everything else, we've been given opportunities simply because of where we are in the United States. Those opportunities weren't available to us from where we were in South Africa.
Awesome. It is truly the land of opportunity. Sheldon, let me ask you, what advice would you give to foreign entrepreneurs that are thinking about expanding to the U.S.?
So I think the advice is be certain about the why. Why do you want to expand into the US? I find a lot of people want to come to the US, but want to come for the wrong reasons. I think that's the first. The second, that business plan. In our early days, you had guided us, and we put together a business plan. And again, in hindsight, if I have a look at it, it was a tick box compliance exercise. In my head, I knew what I was doing. I was running a wealth advisory business. Had I applied myself better, I did a business plan, but did I really apply myself a business plan for the US market? I had a business plan in mind, but I was gonna be a cut and paste. I was gonna do what I was doing in the United States. For anyone thinking of doing this, really apply yourself around what is it that you're going to be doing differently in the United States, because you're going to have to adapt or die, because the market is certainly different in the United States. and then why do you want to come? I've met a number of people that all they want to do is they want to exit where they are. If all it is you want to exit South Africa because you have an issue with South Africa, well then there's sort of 200 countries in the world that you could go to. We weren't that family. That wasn't what it was about for us. Be clear about your reasons. So importantly, the why. Why is it that you want to come, and the preparation work. And it's a preparation on two levels. It's the business level and the family level. And the other thing that I can tell you, if anyone tells you it's easy, they're lying, because it's not easy. I haven't met anyone that said it's easy. But importantly, if you're doing it as a family, the family need to be aligned, because if the family aren't aligned, it's going to be incredibly difficult. It's difficult anyway, but if you got the support of your family and everyone's in, and then it's certainly going to be an easier journey.
Sure. Kirsten, if you'd go through this process again, would you do it again? Would you do it differently?
I would do it again. I don't think Sheldon would do it again.
Sheldon has 9 lives. This only took up 1.
Yeah, I mean, everything's easy in hindsight, right? I've learned a lot. If I knew what I knew then, I would do things a little differently. I would have done a little bit more preparation, but I'm maybe not that. I suppose it's a personality thing, but I've learned a lot. I would definitely do it. I would do it 100 times over. I would do it again. And again, I mean, that's kind of why I created the website. I'm like, I need to impart these learnings so that someone can skip a step that I had to go through, so that they don't have to, trip up that sort of process. But no, I'd do it again. I may prepare a little better next time, but it's all in the learnings.
Sure. You, Sheldon, to do it again, to do it differently? Would it maybe have been easier to just do an EB5 or something like that?
No, so, we joke is I would absolutely do it again. I didn't. Was the process fun? No, it wasn't fun. I had that laser surgery on my eyes. It was the single. It was I would recommend anyone have it done. Was it a pleasant process? Absolutely not. I dreaded the surgery, but it was. I recommend anyone does it. The same with this. The scrutiny, the interrogations, sort of the hours of lying awake, the anxiety around, is this going to happen? It's an emotional process. It's an expensive process. It's not easy, but absolutely, I would do. If you're doing it for the right reasons, I absolutely recommend it. It's been very, very rewarding. Probably the single most rewarding thing we've done as a business and as a family. I would do it again.
And looking back, we talked a little bit about it, but how important do you think was it to have the right advisors, somebody in your line of work who's over here understanding what that compliance aspect took, having a lawyer involved, having an accountant involved? How important was it to have the right advisors advising you and guiding you through this process?
So again, I'll answer it with a short story. So Kirsten knows what I'm talking about. I used when I did some studies, and when I was doing the studies, I used a system called mind maps. So in your mind's eye, if you can imagine these sort of drawings that I did. And I had a network of people that I relied on in South Africa in various areas, from accountants to attorneys to wealth advisors. And when we got to the United States, I built this network, and I literally had a visual representation of that network in the United States. So I knew people in the US that were involved in this ecosystem. When I talk about the ecosystem of people that you're going to really need to get to know for what we call the soft landing. And Leon, a combination of myself and Kirsty ultimately built separate but related businesses that is what we do. These two businesses, much the same as what your business does, these are businesses that are designed to accommodate families coming in from South Africa and help them with that soft landing. But what the architecture and what underpins these two businesses is those maps, those two maps that we have of the network of people that support that journey, that ecosystem of people, subject matter experts in various fields. So immigration attorneys, the CPAs that understand the tax compliance and the double tax agreements between South Africa and the United States, just as examples. Now, what we've realized is there's a lot of people that claim to have the knowledge and the expertise and the years of experience that absolutely do not. And we've realized how costly it is to either think that you can go it alone and try and do it yourself, or get the wrong advice. Having the right people absolutely is going to save you time and money and frustration. And we think with what we've built, we've got a curated list of individuals that tick all the boxes, years of experience and the right qualifications, and a history of sort of helping people get this right up front.
Kirsten, anything you want to add to that?
No. I suppose just like from the business perspective, in some cases, I mean, having the right sort of support and advisors on the ground here is definitely critical to getting a business up and running. So I would say your homework in terms of those individuals is probably the most critical part of what you're doing, because we've had good advice and we've had bad partners. So also those that have, to some extent, taken advantage of the fact that we are green when it comes to business in the USA. So it's to, the key is to sort of try and not just rely on one sort of specialist in an area, rather sort of do your homework when it comes to the people that you're going to partner in business with, because it can go one way or the other. So I think that's important.
Gotcha. All right. We'll have a fun ending here. Tell me, either one of you, what's your favorite thing about America so far?
For me, it's easy. It's just the opportunity. It's the opportunity, and it feels like it feels like we're on holiday. Every day feels like we're on holiday. We exploring and learning new things. It's no one thing. It's finding new teams to support with my kids. It's every time we go on holiday, we in a brand new place. It's not the same old. So that's it for me. It's no one thing.
Kirsten, anything? What's your favorite thing in America?
It's just an adventure for us. And America, everything's 10 times bigger.
That's right. Something you guys miss about South Africa?
I miss lots. Good food, family. There's a way up between what you miss and what and the benefits. I mean, that's the tough part. But,
yeah. So definitely the friends, food, and family, the three Fs. And I suppose as a South African, Leon, you know what I'm talking about. Hotel California, you can, as a South African, you can check out, but you can never.
That's right. That's right. Best advice you would give for an immigrant entrepreneur, a guy who's got his own business in South Africa, wanting to do something similar to what the endeavor that you guys took on?
I would say get a good attorney. I would say do your market research on the business and the environment where you plan to operate. And then also spend a lot of time on the family emotional side and make sure that that your family is on board and wants to be here. And
Yeah, same. In a nutshell, make sure that if you're coming with family, the family are aligned, and then importantly, and I think this is very important, be 100% certain about the why, the when, and the how. The why.
Yeah, when the waters get troublesome, you need to anchor something to why. Why did we do this? We're finding ourselves in a storm. Let's go back to our why. When you anchor that in, yeah, it makes things, brings things into perspective.
The when as well, so when do you plan on doing this? You've got to give yourself some time, and be adequately prepared. And then the how are you doing this? Which of those visa options are you pursuing? Is it the EB5? Is it the L1? Is it something different? You got to choose the appropriate path and the appropriate partners, specialists, guides for all of this.
Yeah, I just so wish as an immigration lawyer at some point that they will change these immigration laws. There's obviously a lot of things that are flawed with the U.S. immigration system, and it's not as revolutionary and constantly adapting as the Australian immigration system, even the UK immigration system. And we're still dealing with laws that are on the books from the 90s. I mean, we're in 2026. And when you visit with people and you advise them, you have these little pigeonholes. So these are the options. It's like, I think I fit within this pigeonhole, but the hole is this big and it's around. I'm round. I can fit in there, but I'm not big enough. How do I make it work? Because the other options are just not on the table. So it makes it very challenging, because obviously when you don't fit squarely within the hole that the immigration system has, then it gets a little bit more challenging. One last question. Give me one word that describes your journey. That's great to hear your wife says exciting, because you know what, from what I can tell, your family is a big part of this decision. We started off with, when you guys, I love the way that you guys sat around the table. It's like, all right, we're going to do this, come up with this marks and make a determination. Family, for the wife to say family, I think is probably the first part of this big journey. And for her to say exciting, says a lot. But sorry, I chimed in. Sheldon, what is your one word that describes your journey?
I need to give you two. So okay. It's transformational and evolving.
Transformational and evolving. Yeah, absolutely. Well, listen, thank you so much for sharing your story. It's not just been inspiring, it's been incredibly valuable, and I hope it's valuable for others who's considering a similar path. It's stories like this that reminds us that immigration is more than just paperwork. It's about a vision, it's about risk, it's about building something meaningful across borders, and also when you have a family, meaningful to create opportunities for family in other parts of the world. Halcrow family, thank you again so much for your time today. I wish you and your businesses and your family all the best.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Go on.
Thank you so much for tuning into this episode. If you are considering or at the start of your immigration process, we encourage you to connect with us at versfeldimmigration.com. Your immigration journey starts here.